Welcome back guys, happy Easter everyone. Today I have an incredible new build for you that outperforms anything I have ever shown to you before in this game. This is way better than using stealth mechanics, stealth multipliers, headshot multipliers. You can now have 100% crit chance in patch 1.5 whenever you want it, wherever you need it. This is all due to a new trick which I will show you in this video. And this is almost kind of a glitch that you can abuse this so dramatically, because you will not only have 100% crit chance, you will also have 35% health refill whenever you make a kill, you will have up to 75,000 damage for your hits, and you will have Sandevistan and Berserk active at the same time, which is at itself absolutely overpowered and normally not possible to do. And during the whole time you will also be 100% invincible. How much more can you actually get out of one build? This is the perfect build for patch 1.5, 152, 1.5 whatever. That I was using a melee weapon, more specifically a katana, was actually no coincidence. Because when you can use Berserk and slow-mo at the same time whenever you want it, using a katana is probably the most broken, overpowered build you can make in this game. And there is one specific katana in this game called the Yinchimaru, which you get when you beat Takemura's storyline from beating Oda, that gives you 100% crit chance whenever you enter Kerenzikov. So this blade does exactly what the developers were desperately trying to patch out in patch 1.5. It gives you 100% crit chance at an insane amount of damage. They patched out everything, every mod except for this weapon. Kerenzikov is very similar to Sandevistan, but you have to activate it in a different way, which also allows us to use Berserk and Kerenzikov at the same time. In order to enter Kerenzikov, you don't have to use an enemy, and that is the actual glitch here, because you can use it whenever you want to use it. Similar to Sandevistan, you just have to have a good muscle memory to perform the following button combination. Hold down your aim button, move left or right and double tap your dodge button. Your character will then step sideways in a very quick movement, and that means you have entered Kerenzikov. And Kerenzikov is basically like the 90% slowdown Quiet Sandevistan Warp Dancer mod. Please don't forget that there is a very little cooldown of 2 seconds where you can't immediately use it again. This is really not an easy combination, so you'll likely have to train this a bit until you develop a perfect muscle memory for it. But when you master it, it will be just as easy for you as if you just activate Sandevistan or Berserk normally. It will just look as smoothly as in my Adam Smasher fight. In order to play with this build, I strongly recommend you to check out all the mods and perks I used for this build, because they are very different from the previous builds. Whenever you enter in a location, you should first activate your Berserk mod, and since the Kerenzikov glitch not only gives you 100% crit chance, but also makes you 100% invincible during the whole time when Kerenzikov is active, you should actually activate it as often as possible, because that will make all these open fights much easier. The damage for your light attacks will be anywhere between 20 and 40,000 damage. The combo finishers will definitely give you the double damage, so the upper end of the 40,000 damage range. However, heavy attacks will give you over 75,000 damage maximum. This is the most damage I could actually get in patch 1.5 without using any other glitches or sniper rifles. Someone also asked me to show you some boss fights to show you how overpowered these builds are, so I decided I will show you the whole boss fight versus Adam Smasher on very hard, where I only use my katana and using the Berserk Kerenzikov glitch. By doing that, I also noticed that it doesn't matter how overpowered and broken your build is, you can only deal 5% of his health per hit. No matter if it's a critical hit or a non-critical hit, we will always deal 9202 damage in this configuration at level 48. So it is kind of sad, because otherwise we would kill him in 2 or 3 strikes, which I was actually looking for, but that is sadly not the case. The developers hard-coded it that the damage is kept at 5%. But however, this also proves that this fight was done in very hard, because I deal 9200 damage, that is the damage on very hard. If you switch to easy, where Adam Smasher has a lower amount of health, you will only deal 4 or 5000 damage. So this proves that all this footage is done in very hard. However, this health cap limit does not apply to other bosses like Cyberpsychos. So for Cyberpsycho, it is actually possible to probably beat him in one hit. That was only 26,000 damage hit that nearly killed him, so I'm very sure you can do better than me. But let's finally talk about the gear, guys. Of course, it is very important that you use the Jinchimaru not only for the 2500 insanely high DPS, but also for the 100% crit chance you get whenever you enter Kerenzikov. The Jinchimaru is single-handedly the best weapon in Cyberpunk 2077 right now, and there is not even another contender close to it. However, the mod options for our melee weapons are still very limited. We could only really apply a cold shoulder mod, and I actually managed to get an epic one from a loot location. I think from shops you can only get the rare cold shoulder, which increases your damage by another 5%. So if you get lucky and you get more than one epic cold shoulder, definitely use the epic ones to get more damage out of your weapon. It makes absolutely no sense to use a different item here in the mod slots. Increasing crit chance is absolutely unnecessary because we get 100% anyway. You actually only need your melee weapon, the Jinchimaru, but if you want to combine this build with another build, like with the best SMG build with the maximum fire rate, I recommend you to use a problem solver with a handyman and the legendary A-Swang, which gives you 25% additional damage, the countermass and 3 additional crunch mods. Since we also use Berserk, that will reduce the recoil of this weapon and makes it also very feasible for this build. But the main weapon definitely is our Katana, and we will probably use that for any kill we make. In my armor I will only use Armadillo mods this time, because even in our eyewear we use Armadillo. We don't need a single percent of crit chance because we get 100% from the Jinchimaru anyway. I don't have a headgear equipped because for aesthetic reasons, and I only use a breastplate with one armor slot because that is also for aesthetic reasons. I like this armor a lot more than anything else. There is still no transmog in this game, so normally you would of course apply a headgear with one armadillo and a breastplate with 2 armadillos. But just for aesthetic reasons, you don't die anyway with this build. I stick to these ones. So you could probably get like 2300 or 2400 armor instead. Of course, you could also go for a bully mod in your eyewear for an 8% critical damage increase, but I kind of wanted to compensate the loss of armor from my headgear, and so I used an armadillo instead. Now it gets really interesting because we are talking about the cyberwear I used in this build, and for this build I used the Militech Berserk Mark V. Not the Mark IV, because the Mark IV increases your range damage and the Mark V increases your melee damage. And the Mark IV only lasts for 30 seconds and the Mark V lasts for 60 seconds. So 60 seconds melee damage increase and all the crazy stuff you can do with Berserk. That will last even longer than you will actually need to fight on Adam Smasher. The first mod actually is Beast Mode, of course. Beast Mode can only be used once in your Berserk mod. And then we go for Legendary Bruising Berserk that gives you another 22% melee damage increase. In the third slot, however, I use a Sharpened Berserk. That is one of the older mods that don't stack, so you can only use one time the Sharpened Berserk for another 25% critical damage. However, you could of course use 2 times the new Bruising Berserk, because the new Bruising Berserk is stacking and you can use more than once, but the melee damage is already very much inflated, so only stacking on more melee damage will not give you more damage, so you should also focus on your other multipliers like increasing crit damage. That will be much better than just focusing on one stat. The other very important change is our nervous system, where we use the Kerenzikov legendary variant, of course. This will give you 3.5 seconds of Kerenzikov, and that also slows down time by 90%. So that is very similar to the Quiant Sandevistan, which also reduces your time by 90%. But the Kerenzikov only has a 3.5 seconds duration. It is also explained how to activate Kerenzikov, but if you use the button combination I showed you at the beginning of this video, you can just activate it whenever you want it. And to increase the time for Kerenzikov, we will use an epic nano relay. There is actually no legendary nano relay in the game, so the best we can add on the time for our Kerenzikov is only 2 seconds. That will make it last for 5.5 seconds or almost 6 seconds, which is quite okay because the Quiant Sandevistan also only lasts for 8 seconds, so we will roughly have a 6 seconds Kerenzikov. and since Kerenzikov only has a cooldown of 2 seconds, you can just activate it again and again and again. If you are quick, you can kill up to 3 enemies just in a single Kerenzikov if they are standing close to each other. But that is actually no problem, you can just activate it again, it makes you invincible, and together with the Jinchimaru you get 100% crit chance, all the insane damage, and that is just the most broken thing you can do in Cyberpunk right now. Another important change to my previous builds in Cyberpunk is that I'm using an epic skeleton and the legendary micro rotors. The micro rotors will increase my attack speed by 25% for all my melee weapons, including katanas. All the other items are very much similar to all the other builds I made, so we use the Mechatronic Core legendary, we use the Heal on Kill in the legendary variant, that gives you 10% health refill on every kill you make, which stacks with the 5% from the Berserk and another 20% from the skill tree. So in total you always get at least 35% health whenever you make a kill. That will ensure that you will actually never die. But you actually can't even take any damage during Kerenzikov anyway. In the circulatory system, of course, we go for the legendary blood vessels, then the legendary bioconductor. The legendary bioconductor reduces every cooldown in your build, which means it reduces the cooldown of the Militech Berserk from 60 seconds to be only 40 seconds, and it reduces the cooldown of Second Heart from 2 minutes to be only 1 minute and 20 seconds. And Second Heart is definitely the most overpowered cyberware in the game, because it simply revives you on death. If you ever made a build with Second Heart, you will never make another build without it again. In the immune system, we use a Detoxifier, a Caterist, then here's the Nano Relays and Kerenzikov as already shown. Legendary armor with 300 armor points, optical camo if you want it, and the fireproof coating of course, because we don't have an anti-burn mod in our clothing. Then the ballistic coprocessor, if you want to use the problem solver or any gun in this build, definitely go for that one. Of course you can also go for the smart weapons if you like. But definitely recommended is the gorilla arms, because if you have a melee build like that with a lot of points in melee and especially in athletics, definitely also get the gorilla arms, because if you are getting bored of your katana, simply smash Adam Smasher in his stupid face. And of course don't forget the tendons for your double jump. The minimum required skills for this build are actually 18 body, 18 tech, of course, to get all the necessary cyberware and to craft the legendary Jinchimaru. The other 4 points, of course, can be spent on intelligence, on cool, or just to get the triple 20 build, as I already recommended you in previous builds. In the body skill tree under athletics, you should definitely get the steel shell for 10% additional armor, tenacious V, which doesn't stop your health regeneration when you get hit, and then even the invincible for another 15% health. Very important of course is steel and chrome for additional 20% melee damage. Then you should get all the regular stuff here in the middle for carry capacity and increasing your health regeneration. But also here on the outside you should get everything that would normally drain your stamina, so that you have all your stamina left to perform melee attacks. In Reflex under Blades, you should definitely get Judge, Jury and Executioner. That simply gives you 100% additional damage, so it basically doubles your damage for every enemy which is at full health. And since you one-shot every enemy, that is absolutely a must-have. Then of course Roaring Waters, 30% additional damage on heavy attacks, increased attack speed, offensive defense, so if an enemy starts shooting at you, you will deal a massive amount of damage. And Float Like a Butterfly is very cool because it just gives you another 50% damage whenever you performed a dodge. So the first 5 seconds after the dodge, and a dodge is of course when you also activate your Kerenzikov, you'll have another 50% damage. So by doing the Kerenzikov glitch, you will immediately also get another 50% damage from the perk Float Like a Butterfly. Unbroken Spirit is really nice if you do melee counterattacks, but that rarely happens. So more important is Death Bolt, because that will always give you 20% health refill whenever you kill an enemy. And as already explained, this stacks with the 10% on Heal on Kill and the 5% on Berserk, so in total you will always get a guaranteed 35% health refill whenever you one-shot your enemies. I would really not recommend to invest any points into bleeding stuff here, because that would be a total waste. Your enemies will not have the time to bleed anyway with this build. But if you reach Blades 20, you should definitely check out the Dragon Strikes. It gives you another 40% critical damage, and when you always make critical hits, that is basically another 40% damage multiplier. But until you unlock Dragon Strike, you can just use your additional points into some perks in the Assault or Handgun tree. The ones like Savage Stoic, Bullet Jog, Eagle Eye, Bullseye, the Executioner perk which also gives you more damage on enemies which are at full health, the Longshot for more damage the farther away are your enemies, and Recoil Wrangler if you want to use weapons with a heavy recoil like the Problem Solver. In the tech tree we go for the usual stuff, but especially Field Technician will give you 10% more damage on every crafted weapon, also for the Jinchimaru, and the Efficiency perk will give you 10% more armor on all your crafted clothes. So these two are definitely the mandatory perks here in the skill tree, alongside with True Craftsman, Grease Monkey, and of course the Edge Runner Artisan to be able to craft legendary weapons. And if you invest 2 more points, I would also recommend you to get the Cutting Edge for an additional 5% damage on all of your weapons, including the Jinchimaru. Last but not least, in the cool tree you only have to go for Assassin for another 15% damage to human enemies, and for Cold Blood we will activate the full Cold Blood with Blood Brawl, which gives you 10% more damage with all your melee attacks. I hope you really like this build and you will enjoy it as much as I do. Please don't forget to subscribe, leave me a like, and see you next time.